What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm here once again to give you the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview you are going to see on YouTube. Now, if this is your first time watching these videos, I do this every night. I share my screen, I take you through all the key players, we talk through their matchups, their form lines, what I like, what I don't, and I do all this to give you all the information that you need to make the best bets possible. Now, this doesn't work every single day. First day of the playing tournament, we started off very well, we went 3-1 in the Lakers game with our singles bets. And then that Warriors game came and things weren't as great. So let's quickly recap the day that was. Overall, 1.4 units in the negative. The first play was on Rui Hachimura, over 19.5 points plus rebounds and assists. Scored quite a few buckets, but he didn't rebound. He got one assist, but his rebounds were the main letdown. And rebounds was probably the thing I liked the most about his PRA. So that blew up in our face. Took LeBron James under 4.5 points in the first quarter. He finished with 3. He missed a few layups, which helped, but that cashed. We took Torian Prince over 5.5 points, made 3-pointers, so that cashed for quite early into the game. And we took Austin Reeves over 14.5 points. A little bit sweaty, but he got it done late in the fourth quarter. Moving into the Warriors versus Kings game. Now, I am wearing a Warriors shirt today. Don't go for the Warriors at all. I just like basketball paraphernalia. The first bet, cash quite easy. Brandon Podziemski over 11.5 points plus rebounds and assists. Got that close to plus money because I bumped it up by 1 point. We also had Chris Paul over 5.5 assists. Didn't get close. That Warriors offense was ass. And we took Steph Curry over 4.5 rebounds. We got hooked. He finished on 4. I think he ran around that whole fourth quarter with 4 rebounds. So couldn't get it done for us. We had some 2 high-value single plays. Jonas Valanciunas was 1 bucket away. We took over 5.5 rebounds, 5.5 points, had like 10 boards, 4 points. He went 1 from 7 from the field. So that was an absolute killer. And we took Austin Reeves to score 20 points. He finished on 16, but he did miss quite a few shots early in that game. But for the most part, not such a bad day when it comes to how I read it. The CP3, probably the play. The CP3 and the Rue for us, but we're going to do it all again. We'll go through the 2 games today. It's the East play-ins. Go through all the key players, their matchups, talk about what I like, what I don't, and I'll have all my pinned comments. Sorry, I'll have all my best bets in the pinned comments, and hopefully throughout the preview today, you'll get to see the reason why I like them. So let's go. All right, we're kicking things off with the Miami Heat versus the Philadelphia 76ers. This is a home game for Philly. Joel Embiid's a game-time decision, but he will not be missing this game. I'm sure of it. Duncan Robinson, very much the same. Terry Rozier is out for the Miami Heat. So let's jump into it, shall we? We'll go through all the key players. There's a lot in this game that I do like, but I've got to tell you, there's probably not much that I love, but let's go through it. And firstly, I want to apologize. My dog's right under my desk. She's snoring. She's had a big day. That CP3 play upset her, so she's knocked out at the moment. But let's jump into it. We'll start with these Philadelphia 76ers. I think there's probably less players to really dive into. We'll start with the big dog, Joel Embiid. Now, Joel's points line, 30.5. Quite low for someone averaging a lot more than 30 throughout this season. He's, 5 games back since returning from his injury. And, we've seen an improvement in his points, his minutes, and all that type of stuff as he shakes off some rust. Still, his line's only at 30.5. And why is that? Well, one, he does have a tough matchup here against Bam Adebayo in the Miami Heat. I can see here he's gone under in 3 consecutive games against the Miami Heat, only averaging 25.6 points per game. In those games, he's shooting 55% from the field, but only 18.3 attempts per game. So most likely there could be a lot of doubles going his way. He's moving that ball along and not getting as many shots up. Over his last 10 games, he's averaging 22 shots, shooting 50% from the field. So what he's been doing lately, it's very different to what he's done against Miami in the past. But his most recent game against Miami, it was his second game back from injury. He scored 29 points in that game, shot the ball 25 times. He did only shoot 44% from the field, and he only got to the line 5 times. So Miami Heat defend well without fouling, which is great. And Joel Embiid is a free throw merchant, and we've seen over his last 3 games, 13, 10, and 9. So starting to get to the line quite well. But my main concern around his points prop is, can he get to the free throw line against this Miami Heat that doesn't give out many fouls? So his points prop, I'm going to steer away from. One thing I am quite interested to play is probably this first quarter overs prop. So he's cashed this line of 9.5 points in 69% of his games this season. Over his last 5 games since he's come back from injury, he's covered in 3 out of his last 5, which is a 60% hit rate. But what you'll notice, and you can see it here, thanks to Outlier, over his last 5 games, obviously he had to ramp up. 5.7 minutes in his first game, up to 8, 8.4, 8.8. And then his last game against the Magic, he played 12 minutes in that first quarter. So throughout the year, he was pretty much playing 12 minutes in the first quarter. He should have played 12 minutes in the first quarter here against Miami. But what we can see is in his last 3 games, he's covered this line twice, 12 and 13 points in the first quarter in his last 2 games against the Heat. In his most recent game against the Heat, though, 7.9 minutes in the first quarter. So in that game, that was his second game back from injury. So he absolutely torched them. I think I don't even think Miami will do too many adjustments when it comes to Joel Embiid. I think they're satisfied with how they defended him. 29 points is all he scored. He did score early. Tyrese Maxey did have a big game in that one, but I think Miami would probably prefer that. Joel Embiid, once he gets rolling, he's impossible to stop. So I don't feel like they make too many adjustments on how they defend Embiid. In terms of his first quarter points, I do like it. 9.5, it's plus money. When he plays more than 12 minutes, he's got a wonderful hit rate here. So I know it's quite high. Could be a sweaty first quarter, but I think he's going to get busy. So I'll research that a little bit further. But Joel Embiid in the first quarter, I do not mind that. Looking at his assist prop, that line's at 4.5. Minus 155, though, and his recent form since he's come back from his injury, it's a bit all over the place. He is averaging 5.2 assists per game, 7, 3, 1, 8, and 7. So he had 3 assists the last time he played the Miami Heat. Had 11 potential assists. So his potential assists pretty much up there, apart from this game from Memphis. Big blowout win, by the way. So potential assists are definitely there. It comes down, can the 76ers make shots? So I'm not a huge fan of the assist prop. He's gone under in 3 straight games against the Miami Heat, but in the prior 2 games, his potential assists are much lower. I think he's going to probably get about 10 potential assists in this game. I can't tell you whether his teammates are going to make some shots. So his assist prop, I'd prefer to stay away from. And now we look at his rebounds prop. So let's talk about it. His rebound line is at 11.5. Now, he's only cashed this in 3 of his last 10. Since he's come back from injury, he's cashed this twice out of 5 games. The matchup's not too bad against the Miami Heat. Joel Embiid, however, has only covered in 2 of his last 3 against Miami. So his form against them, yeah, it's a little bit how you're going. And Joel Embiid, the caliber of player that he is, his lines are going to be quite high. 30 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists is what the sports books have said his line's at. He's more than capable of getting those. But based off these numbers that we see here, I can't necessarily predict how his stat line's going to go. So I do like his first quarter prop. I don't really like anything else outside of that. The next player here is Tyrese Maxey, and I think he's probably going to be one of the most popular players on the board. His form is very easy to read. When things like that are easy to read, sometimes I think, is this too good to be true? Because if anybody can find this play, the sportsbook know how to set these lines. And it could be somewhat of a trap. I'm not too sure, but let's dig into it a little bit. So looking at his points prop, it's at 23.5, 24 points. Now, he's cashed this in 7 of his last 10 games. He's averaging 27 points per game. His matchup against the Heat, somewhat difficult, 12th fewest points to point guards on the season. But the reason why we'll see a lot of Tyrese Maxey love is his games against Miami. So he's versed the Miami Heat 4 times this season, 12, 30, 30, and 37 points. So his last 3 games, he's absolutely buried them. Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, but a lot of those games were without Embiid. That is true. Half of those games were without Joel Embiid. So if we filter his games with Embiid, he's only played against Miami Heat once with Embiid in the lineup this season. And in that game, he scored 37 points. He shot the ball 26 times. He shot 58% from the field, 5 3-pointers made. So a massive game there from Tyrese Maxey. Miami might make adjustments to try to limit what Tyrese Maxey does, but does that potentially expose him to more damage inside from Joel Embiid? Potentially. But you might be thinking his assist prop could be good because that line's at 6.5. His numbers for assists are a little bit all over the place. 4 of his last 10 games, he's covered this line. Up against Miami Heat, though, very much like his points prop, his last 3 games, he's absolutely cashed against them. So is this a matchup thing? If we filter the games out without Joel Embiid, you'll see the last game. Actually, I don't even need to filter it because I can tell you right here. 11 assists. His most recent game was Embiid was playing. Tyrese Maxey had 11 assists in that game. So, yeah, I think his points plus assists will be a very popular play as well for the very same reason. He's really done well in both points and assists against the Miami Heat. Points plus assists is right here. That line's at 29.5. He's cashed that in 7 of his last 10, averaging 33 points plus assists. If we chuck our Joel Embiid filters on, we can see he's cashed in 6 out of his last 10 games with Embiid in the lineup. Since Embiid's returned, he's hit this in 2 out of 3 games with Joel Embiid back. So great game against Miami, scored a lot of points against the Orlando Magic, had a quiet one against Memphis, didn't really have to do too much. In terms of matchups, his assist matchup against Miami is a good one. So you might consider just taking his assists alone because he's covered this assist line in 3 consecutive games. Points plus assists, he's killed them points wise though. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't know. I just feel like it's too good to be true. Like he's played so well as of late. He's played so well against the Miami Heat, and the sports books they still set his line at only 23.5 points. So even if you include this 12-point game against Miami, he's still averaging 26.5 points against them. So I don't know what the sports books are doing here. It makes me a little bit nervous. All the numbers are stacking up. Feel free to take it, of course. I just don't feel too confident in it. Let me say that. The next player we're going to look through, though, Kelly Oubre. Now, I took his last game. His points were up in the last game against Brooklyn. Kelly only scored 8 points. 13.5 points is his line. He's covered in 8 out of his last 10, and he's covered in 3 of his last 4 games against the Miami Heat. Looking at the matchup, it's decent. 14th, so middle of the pack for Miami. So it's not a good matchup or a bad one. I think the main thing to call out here is that Philly, for the first time, I feel like all year, are completely healthy. Now, if we try to filter out the main scoring options, we know Joel Embiid is one, Tobias Harris is one, Buddy Hield is going to get some shots up, and Tyrese Maxey, right? So outside of Kelly Oubre, these are the 4 players who are most likely to shoot the ball. And we can see here that Kelly Oubre has only played 1 game with all of those guys in the lineup. In that game, though, he did score 21 points, played 29 minutes, 6 for 14. He got to the free throw line quite well. So I think that number of free throw is an outlier for him. I feel like this line is just about right, but we have a small sample size with Kelly Oubre playing with all of these guys. One thing to factor in. And the reason why I say that this is important, that last game against Brooklyn, where Kelly Oubre only scored 8 points, felt like I got scammed. I didn't watch this game, by the way. That was at like 3:30 in the morning. But when I checked the box score, what I found was Kelly Oubre only played 24 minutes, which is quite low based on what he had been doing as a late. Buddy Hield got a lot of runtime in minutes. So who knows? That could have been just a tune-up to prepare for this game today. I think Kelly Oubre to go over his points line. I think it's still a good option here. The other one I don't mind is his first quarter prop, 2.5 points. He did go under it against Brooklyn, but he's hit in 7 of his last 10, and he's cashed in 4 consecutive games against the Miami Heat. He could get this done in 1 shot. He could do it in 2, but regardless, if he does it, I'm happy. Minus 133 the odds, though, so I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I'll do some line shopping and some research to see whether we can find some better odds for it to take it as a single bet. But just creating my shortlist as we go. For Kelly Oubre, what else is there? Assists, lines at 1.5, rebounds 5.5. There's not too much shady stuff going on here. Has rebound well against Miami, so he had 8 rebounds the last time they matched up. But again, if you muck around with all those filters, with all those guys in the lineup, Orlando was the last game. He had 9 rebounds in that game, Kelly Oubre, with all those plays that I mentioned. So, can't get a strong read right there. Who else do I have in this game from the Philadelphia 76ers? Now, we've got Tobias Harris. Now, I think a couple of months ago, I probably committed to never looking at Tobias Harris and Mikal Bridges ever again. But Tobias Harris numbers are pretty sweet, I got to tell you. So, let's have a look at it. His line is at 14.5. He's cashed this in 7 of his last 10, and in head-to-head matchups, 2 of his last 4 against Miami. I'm considering taking him for 10 points for our bet because he's cashed that pretty consistently. But I wanted to filter his games with Joel Embiid in the lineup. Now, Tobias Harris with Joel Embiid, averaging 15.9 points per game, cashing in 5 out of his last 10. He's played, 3 games with Joel Embiid since he's come back from injury, and he scored 18, 15, and 14 points in those games. He has, however, gone under in 2 straight games against Miami with Embiid in the lineup. So you might not want to take that. Rebound-wise, his line's at 6.5, 7 of his last 10, 1 out of his last 4 against Miami. We do the same thing, chuck in some Embiid filters, and what do we see? He's only covered this in 2 of his last 10 games, And he's gone under in both games against the Miami Heat with Joel Embiid in the lineup. The Heat do allow the third fewest rebounds to power forwards on the season. So if you're looking at recent form, it doesn't look too bad. You apply Joel Embiid filters, suddenly these numbers drop a lot. So we can see this season he's averaging 6.4 rebounds on the year. With Embiid, he's averaging 6.1. So that means without Embiid, 6.8. So almost a rebound less, but yeah, Tobias Harris, I'm not really feeling any of those. Quick look at his assist prop because he can get a little bit sneaky with it at times. 6 out of his last 10, 2.8 as an average, and in half of his games against Miami. So, yeah, I'm not really feeling Tobias Harris because, put it this way, the reason why I'm taking my time throughout this Philly game is Miami have done a great job containing Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey has cooked them. So, I don't know if that's been a winning recipe for Miami here. So, in all games, we've had Maxey have strong games. We've had Joel Embiid go under. I guess this is why the Maxi play, it feels too good to be true because it's too easy to read. I think there are players like Buddy Hield, Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris with potential to really cover their lines in this game. So let's have a quick look at Buddy Hield because I haven't looked at him for a very long time. Now, he has been playing this whole time. Against Brooklyn, he scored 19 points, 21 minutes. I wonder what his numbers look like when he plays with Joel Embiid. So with Joel Embiid, he's only covered this line once since Joel Embiid has returned to the lineup. So that's not super convincing, is it? So not really loving that. For Buddy, just double checking if there's anyone else for Philly. So there's no one else for Philly. I think from the guys from Philly, Joel Embiid in the first quarter looks like a good play. Actually, I wanted to look at the first quarter as well. Here we go. Minus 104, 8 out of his last 10 games. We're looking at his last 5 because Joel Embiid's been back in the lineup. Actually, Embiid's been back for. Let me just filter with Joel Embiid. Last 5 games with Joel Embiid. So 3 games for Tobias Harris since Joel Embiid's returned. In those games, 6, 6, and 5 points in the first quarter. And the last time he played Miami with Joel Embiid, he had 7 points in the first quarter. Last 3 against Miami, 7, 7, and 9. So he's got things done early. 3.5 points is a great number. It's a key number, that 3.5. He only needs 2 buckets. And at minus 104, it could be something around with. So Tobias Harris doesn't look like a bad play. But let's jump into these Heat players. So the first one is we've got Jimmy Butler. This is the play-in tournament. So I don't know if playoff Jimmy's going to come out in this game. If you were someone who just bet on numbers and trends, Jimmy's under in his PRA is a wonderful play. He's cashed the under in 8 of his last 10. He's cashed the under in 3 of his last 4 games against Philly. But I don't know if playoff Jimmy's going to come out to play for this one. So I'm personally not going to put any bets on Jimmy Butler, I don't believe, because I don't know what to expect. But points-wise, the trends lean to the under. But if you know anything about basketball, Jimmy steps up at this time of the year. So that line might be a little bit too low. Looking at his assist line, though, 5.5, he's covered in 5 of his last 10, 2 of his last 4 against Philly. Not super convincing. And then his rebound line is at 5.5, 3 of his last 10, and only 1 of his last 4 against Philly. So a lot of these numbers, they all trend to the under in his PRA. Just have a look at his PRA. 35.5. He's gone under in 8 out of his last 10. Let me just flip this to the under. 8 of his last 10, and he's gone under in 3 consecutive games against the 76ers. So, yeah, I don't know what's happening here. If Jimmy does go under, I'll be kicking myself because all the numbers point to an under, but that might be too easy, too obvious. But we'll see. If playoff Jimmy arrives, then we've probably dodged a bullet there. So hopefully he does have a big game. The other player I want to look at is Nikola Jovic. So I've had a bit of success betting on this fella over the last 10 games. 6 of his last 10, he's covered this line of 6.5. I was actually looking at his points plus assists, which is at 8.5, and check that out. 8 out of his last 10 games, he's gone over, averaging 13.6 points plus assists. In terms of matchup against Philly, it's a pretty good matchup for power forwards. And in head-to-head matchups, he's played them twice, once in Feb and once in April, 6. And then in the last game, probably about 12 days ago, 11 points and 1 assist. So he managed to do that in only 19 minutes. Over his last 10 games, he's playing 23 minutes a night, but
the Miami Heat pretty close to very healthy, especially at that position that Jovic is at. Jaime Jaquez, Kevin Love, even Haywood Highsmith, they can all kind of play that 4 position. So Jovic, his minutes might be impacted, but what we've seen here, if we muck around with the filters, if we assume he'll probably get 10 to 19 minutes, right? In 10 to 19 minutes, he's getting 7.7 points plus assists. So that's not a great sign for us. But based on the raw numbers, it is a good lean. But if we factor in how many minutes he might play, it's probably not the best play. So I'll investigate that a little bit further. But the hit rates on his recent form are pretty good. The other one we're going to look at is Tyler Hero. Where's my boy Tyler? So his points line 20.5 for Tyler Hero, cashing in 5 of his last 10. He's covered in 3 straight games against Philly, 3 out of his last 5. We talk about matchups. A somewhat difficult matchup, but it's 10th fewest points of shooting guards on the season. What do we like about Tyler Hero? So he's been back from injury now since this Houston game. So we're looking at 6 games back from injury, and he's covered this line 3 times since he's come back. In his last 6 games, what do we see? We see that his minutes, they do fluctuate between 25 and 48, but he should play 30 to 35 minutes at least in this game, I would assume. If we muck around with his minutes, let's go at least 30 minutes. So his hit rate's not great, only averaging 20 points per game, 5 out of his last 10 when he does that. But he did cover this in 3 straight games against Philly. In those games, 31, 38, and 38 minutes. 17, 25, and 23 shot attempts. Now, in his last 10 games, he's only covered the 20 shot attempt mark 3 times, so a little bit volatile. So I've got to tell you, I'm not loving what I'm seeing here so far in this game, but I think I gave you guys a heads up on that. His first quarter props line, I might be able to get around this. His line's at 4.5. The odds aren't great at minus 130. Now, 4.5 is a key number for a player like Tyler Hero. Well, it's not one that's going to turn me off. Reason being is most likely he's going to make a 3-pointer in the first quarter. I can't see him finishing on 4. I think 5, very doable for Tyler Hero. Now, he's cashed this in 7 of his last 10, 4 consecutive games for Tyler Hero. And what we can see is since he came back against the Houston Rockets. And since that point, we've only seen more and more minutes for the first quarter for Tyler Hero as he ramps up his workload. So we might see at least 10 to Tyler Hero in the first quarter. I'm going to look at the volume, the shots he takes, and everything like that to see how confident I am in this first quarter play. But based on the increased minutes and his solid hit rate, I feel like it's a good play. And against Philly, he's hit this in 4 out of his last 5. So, and in those games, 8.9 minutes as an average in the first quarter. So, yeah, Tyler Hero in the first quarter looks pretty good to me, but I'll dive in a bit further. His assist prop, 6 of his last 10. The matchup's good here against Philly. And Tyler Hero, he's covered this in 4 consecutive games against them. I think what makes this probably a little bit difficult, the Miami Heat, well, they don't have Terry Rozier, actually. So Tyler Hero might be forced into that playmaking role. Looking at his potential assists, 10, 12, 11, and 14. So about 11 potential assists on average against Sixers. Over his last 10 games, he's getting 9.3 potential assists. So it's not very high. More recently, 10, 7, and 12. So, yeah, I think his assist prop could be a good play. I guess, as I try to filter through my thoughts, I'm thinking about where is Philadelphia weak when it comes to defense? Where do they allow points to occur? And from what I understand, they foul a lot. So getting to the free throw line, I think if Miami can run in transition, they can score points that way. And I think potentially some spot up shooting. I know in like defenses, pick and roll coverage and stuff like that, Philadelphia 76 is quite good. Tyler Hero, is the main ball handler in pick and roll. So, yeah, him scoring points, I'm a little bit hesitant to look at based on the matchup and how they defend. Unless Jimmy Butler takes on the score of the ball handling duties and Tyler Hero becomes a spot up shooter, then I think Tyler Hero can score that way. But I think the fact that he's going to be lining up a point guard in this game, I think the assist prop probably a good chance here for Tyler Hero. So I've added it to my short list, and I'll research that a little bit later on. Rebound-wise, his line's at 4.5. He's got an excellent hit rate for this in his last 10, 8 of his last 10. But in head-to-head matchups, what do we see? He's gone over in his last two of his last 5 games. So Looking at his rebound chances, 8.2 as an average against Miami. In his last 10 games, 8.4. So if he's getting, let's say, 8 rebound chances and we need him to get 5 rebounds, it's not a great number. I'm assuming a lot of these rebounds are probably uncontested for Tyler Hero. Yeah, I don't love that, but I'll take a closer look into his assists. Now, one that I feel is a somewhat risky play I wanted to share with you is one for Jaime Jaquez Jr. And I'm looking at his points plus his assists. Now, I'm not overreacting to the last 2 games he had in the season where he destroyed the Toronto Raptors, right? 20-9 and then 18-5. So I'm not looking at this for that very reason. It's very much on his season form. So 7.5 points plus assists. He doesn't have any injuries, completely healthy. His minutes can be a little bit volatile, but he's hit this line at an 85% hit rate so far this year, 64 of 75. The Miami Heat are healthy, so they have a lot of depth in those wing and forward positions. So Jaime Jaquez, his minutes could potentially be impacted. These last 2 games against the Raptors, you could say, is a bit of a tune-up for him to prepare him, but I read some articles about what was said after these games, and a lot of the coaches were talking about, or Spo was talking about, how Jaquez looks like he's doing his rookies in the rookie of the month form again. His legs look better. He feels stronger. He's healthier, playing with confidence. A quick way to lose all that confidence is to slash his minutes. So I feel like he's still going to get a bit of runtime. And with that runtime, 7.5 points and assists, I definitely think there's a possibility here. If Miami do slow it down in the half court, he potentially could be challenged. I think Tyler Hero being back, could that impact Jaquez Jr.? Probably not, because he's cashed this in 15 of 20 games with Tyler Hero in the lineup. If we also look at how he's played against the 76ers in his rookie season, 32, 15, 9. So it's a downward trend, but he still has cashed this in 4 consecutive games against Philly. That last matchup against Philly about 12 days ago, Jaquez played 20 minutes, scored 6 points and 3 assists. So covering the 7.5 points and assists with ease. I'm going to double check the box score for that game just to make sure everyone I assume would be playing was playing. But Jaime Jaquez, points plus assists, I don't mind that whatsoever. I have a look at Bam Adebayo. So there's nothing I saw in here that made my shortlist for Bam, but let's see what we can come up with. His points line, 17.5, 5 his last 10. Tough matchup here against Joel Embiid. In head-to-head matchups, he has covered in 4 of his last 7, which is great. But if we have a look at the games, I actually can't filter it with Embiid in this, but that last game Embiid played, I think a lot the next 2 games Embiid was not there, so he ate them alive. His assist numbers 3.5, 4 of his last 10, so that's a pretty awful chart to read. And then his rebound line 10.5. He's gone under in 4 consecutive games, which isn't great. And against Philly, he's gone over this in games. So 10.5 is the line. He had 11 rebounds in that last game with Joel Embiid in the lineup. Yeah, it could happen. It could be the 5th straight game against Philly where he gets his rebound line, but his recent form is pretty trash. So, yeah, I'm not loving what I'm seeing for Bam Adebayo in this, and there's nothing that I'm loving for an under either. Who else do we have from this Miami Heat team that I may have missed? We can have a quick look at Caleb Martin, actually. So he's in the starting lineup. His numbers are all over the place. 4 of his last 10, 2 of his last 7 against Philly. So that's not wonderful. His assist line's at 2.5, 7 of his last 10. But I think, even if we just look at his PRA, for example, Caleb Martin, I don't know if you guys remember this, last year's playoffs, Caleb Martin was an absolute beast from what I remember. Maybe he wasn't. I'm just having a look at Stats Muse at the moment real quick just to have a look at Caleb Martin's play. In the play, what's Caleb Martin done? Actually, he had a really strong series against Boston. Against Boston, he was a beast. And then when he came up against Denver, he really got shut out. But against Boston, he was lighting them up. So it could have been just for the series. It could be the matchup. So I would feel confident betting on Caleb Martin in this one. So, yeah, look, other than that, I think the key players that I don't mind here, I think Jaquez Jr.'s, that's a big risk, but that could probably cash in easily. Tyrese Maxey, points plus assists, it feels like the most obvious play to make in this game, but I know a lot of people are going to be betting it. Bets like that concern me. Kelly Oubre, do I go back to the well? I bet on his quarter points and his points prop in the last game. It blew up in my face. I might do that. Joel Embiid in the first quarter. That'll probably be a popular play as well, but I can see why, and I can't find a reason not to take it. Tobias Harris in the first quarter. I don't know if anyone's going to bet that, but I don't mind it. Jovic, I think his minutes are a bit of a concern, but he is going to be starting, so a first quarter play for him could be on. And I might have Jimmy Butler's first quarter assist. The hit rate is good, but yeah, I didn't love it when I saw it. So that's Miami versus Philly. I've obviously checked my pin comment, and you'll see what bets I do eventually land on. Let's get into the next game and see Atlanta Hawks versus the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are 3-point favorites in this game. Who do we have? Clint Capella's game time, but it looks like he's going to play. Ayo Dosunmu's a game time decision. He's probable, as well as Andre Drummond. So let's kick things off with let's start with the Atlanta Hawks. There's a few players that I don't mind. So we've got Trae Young, and I've got two different reads on Trae Young at the moment. The first read that I have is an under in his points prop. That line's at 22.5, but I've had a quick look at the books. You can actually get this at 20 minus under 23.5, and you can get that for like minus 110 depending on where you look. But not only has he's gone under a lot as of late. He's 3 games back from being injured. And you can see his minutes started to ramp up 20, 27, then 32 minutes in his last game against Indiana. So minutes are coming back, but even prior to his injury, he wasn't scoring the ball very well despite playing a lot of minutes. His shot attempts are down. So for 23.5 points, it could be difficult for him to get that with 114 shots. In head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in 4 of his last 5 against the Chicago Bulls. And the matchup is great. The Bulls, they don't allow many points to point guards this season. It's been pretty much the same story all year. So they defend point guards quite well when it comes to scoring the ball, but they do allow point guards to get a lot of assists. Now, if you think of how Trae Young scores a lot of points, pick and roll, a bit of transition, he gets to the free throw line because he's a free throw merchant, and there's some sort of isolation play in there. I think that's how Trae Young probably scores a lot of his points. If we think about this Chicago Bulls team, they defend the pick and roll quite well. Don't allow too many free throws, and the Bulls play quite slow, so I actually don't allow too many transition points given their pace, and they don't turn over the ball too much. So I feel like all the ways that Trae Young likes to score, the Bulls can really counter that. So I think the under on his points could be a good play. His assist prop, though, the over is going to be a popular play, and I can see why, and I like it. So, firstly, Trae Young. He's cashed this in 6 of his last 10, 3 games back from injury, 11, 7, and 12. The game where he had 7 up against the Timberwolves, which is a difficult matchup. The Bulls, they give up a lot of assists. The matchup for point guards is not too difficult. And in head-to-head matchups, Trae Young's got over in 4 of his last 5. He's averaging 12 assists in those games. He's played the Bulls twice this season. 13 and 14 assists in those 2 games. A lot of potential assists. And in his last game against Indiana, 26 potential assists as well. So I think this really coincides with the under in his points because his usage rate is going to be there. But if he's only going to shoot the ball 15 times, but he has the rock every single play, there's a good option for some potential assists in this game. And how's he going to get those potential assists? Well, looking into my crystal ball, I know how the Bulls play at a pretty slow pace. So that could be a little bit difficult on the transition side of things for Trae Young to get some assists. But in the half court, I could see a whole lot of pick and roll action. I could see a whole lot of him driving, kicking out to shooters. And I think where the Bulls really struggle to defend is that 3-point line. They don't defend the 3-point line very well at all. Now, does Trae Young have some shooters? He's got a few. Bogdanovic is an absolute sniper. Hunter and DeJounte Murray can get streaky. Garrison Matthews off the bench, surprisingly, can get hot at times. So I think he's got a few options there to get some assists around the perimeter. So I do like the over in his assist prop, but I feel like that's going to be a popular play. But yeah, we'll see where I land. I did line shop that as well, and I found pretty good odds. But I have taken the assist prop actually. Minus 110 is what I found because the odds have started to move. The under in his points prop, I've decided to put it in a parlay instead. So high value, not a single. I've got same game value plays on Trae Young. So it's a full combination of his prop line. I'm thinking under in points, under in rebounds, over in assists for Trae Young. It'll probably get about plus 500, plus 550 odds, I think. So I'll look into that straight after this video, but that's your preview on Trigger Trae Young. Next up, let's look at DeJounte Murray. DeJounte. So his points line is at 23.5. Now his points line here is going to be absolutely ridiculous and difficult to predict. He's cashed in 5 of his last 10 games. Trae Young's been back for 3. DeJounte Murray has cashed this line easily in the 2 games where Trae Young has crushed his prop line. This Minnesota game, it looked like it was struggling for him to get off. In head-to-head, though, he's gone under in 6 consecutive games against the Chicago Bulls, DeJounte Murray. If you could put money on him to score 17 points, most likely win it because that's what he's finished on in his last 4 games against the Bulls, which is absolutely insane. So tough read on his points, but his assist prop lines at 5.5, 7 of his last 10, 4 of his last 6 against the Bulls. But given the way that they defend point guards, that data might be a little bit swayed. So if you have a look at the games with Trae Young, he's covered in 6 of his last 10, 2 of his last 2 games, really, since Trae Young's been back from injury. Murray's gone under his assist line. And if we look at against the Bulls, with Trae Young in the lineup, 2 of his last 4. So, yeah, this is a difficult one. I can't get a good read on DeJounte Murray, I got to tell you. I think the only one I might consider taking would be his 3-point prop. So he's cashed in 8 of his last 10. The Bulls, they allow the second most 3-pointers made on the season. The only thing I'm battling with here is that he's only hit this line in 1 of 6 games against the Bulls. So in these games, he's shooting 25% from downtown against Chicago, averaging 6 attempts per game. But in his last 10, he's taking almost 9 shots per game, 3.1 3-pointers made. If we check his numbers with Trae Young, we can see his last 10 games only averaging 6 attempts. So it aligns very well to what's happened against the Chicago Bulls. And the reason for this, I think, well, he shoots 24% from 3-point land when Trae Young is in there. And I think partly the reason why is because Trae Young is so dominant with the ball. DeJounte Murray is not a catch and shoot guy. He's a dribble to find his rhythm into a jump shot. So I'm not liking his 3-point prop, even though great matchup. I think of the style and the way that they play, unless DeJounte Murray gets a lot more ISO opportunities where he can dribble into his shot. That's the only instance I could see it happening. But yeah, I'm not loving what I see for DeJounte Murray in this game. Who else have we got? We've got Bogdanovic. Let's check out Bogdanovic. So I am leaning on his over for points here, old bogey. Now, he's cashed this in 8 of his last 10 games. He's got a pretty decent matchup here. We know that the Chicago Bulls don't defend the perimeter very well, and this is where this man lives. Now, in head-to-head matchups, he's cashed this in 5 of his last 7 against the Bulls. He's played them 3 times this season, scoring 22, 28, and 20 points against the Chicago Bulls. So, Bogey's made it happen. If we play with this Trae Young filter, what do we see? With Trae Young, Bogey has covered in his last 2 against the Bulls. Both of those games were this season. In his last 10 games with Trae, he's only covered in 4 of his last 10, although he has covered this line in 3 straight games with Trae Young in the lineup. So is that a recent form thing? On the season, he's hit this at 44% of the time with Trae Young, which is not great, but he does have a good matchup in this game. The matchup is it's ideal for someone like Bogdanovic. Where he likes to score is where the Bulls like to give it up. So hopefully Trae Young can dime him up. Another prop you could consider is his 3-point prop. The line's only at 2.5, 12 of his last 20 games, 61% of games this season. With Trae Young in the lineup, I wonder if this improves it or makes it worse. With Trae Young, he's cashed in 11 of his last 20 games. In head-to-head matchups against Chicago, with Trae Young in the lineup, he's cashed this in 5 consecutive games, which is pretty crazy. Without Trae Young, he only had 2 3-pointers. So bogey with Trae Young against the Bulls is money. It's lights out. But his 3-point line, minus 162, that's not a great hit rate that I like to see. I'm just checking that head-to-head thing one more time. And a lot of the games he is finishing right on 3. So if this is at 3.5, I wouldn't feel as confident taking it. 3 looks like a good look. So yeah, I'll do some line shopping. We'll see. If I can find some better odds, I'll probably take that. But if I see odds like that, I probably won't be touching a damn thing. What else do we have? We have DeAndre Hunter, and he's someone who could pop off in this game, but looking at his form, it is honestly all over the place. So over 16 and a half, 4 of his last 10. He's only cashed this in 44% of games this season. He is lining up at the 4, but DeAndre Hunter and DeMar DeRozan, they are threes. They're just playing the 4 position. Yeah, so his hit rate isn't great, and against the Chicago Bulls, he's covered in 1 of his last 4. So those numbers aren't great. Looking at his rebounds, though, what do we see? Lines at 4.5, 5 of his last 10, only 37% of games he's covered in. But against the Bulls, his last 3 games against them, he has rebounded extremely well. 9 rebounds, 6 rebounds, and 6 rebounds once more. But yeah, his recent form's a bit all over the place. If I could trust this guy to grab some rebounds. So his potential assists, averaging 8 per game, which is quite low. Against the Bulls, 8.8. So a little bit higher, but to get 5 boards, I'm a little bit hesitant on that guy there. We then have Clint Capella. So there's still no Okongwu, so Capella in such an important game might get a bigger runtime. His line's at 12.5. He's cashed the over in 5 of his last 10 games, 42% of games this year. The matchup, somewhat difficult here against the Bulls, but he's cashed in 5 consecutive games against them. He's versed the Bulls twice this year, scoring 13 and 15 points. So how can you not lean to the over there? Rebound-wise, 12.5, 3 of his last 10, and only 2 of his last 5. So 2 games against the Bulls this season, he's gone under his rebound line. So yeah, 12.5 for Clint Capella seems a little bit steep if you ask me. But yeah, I'm not loving that to death, although it does help and correlate well with the Trae Young assist play. I got to tell you. That I shan't be betting on. But let's jump into the Chicago Bulls and see what we can come up with. What do we have? Caruso, DeRozan, Desonmu, Vucevic, Kobe White. So what do we have? Let's look at DeMar DeRozan. So his points line is super high, 29.5 points. And I get it. As of late, DeRozan's been killing it. 4 straight games over this line, 6 over his last 10. The games he's gone under, he's gone quite close as well. Now, this Atlanta Hawks team can't defend to save their lives. DeRozan hasn't necessarily killed them in the past. He's covered this only 2 out of his last 7 games. Last game against Atlanta, he did score 31 points, though. So when it comes to him scoring, I'm a little bit hesitant. So Atlanta, they don't like it when teams run on them. But the thing is, the Bulls don't run. So I don't think to worry about that. They can be a little bit susceptible to spot ups, but they do foul a fair bit. So DeRozan could get to the free throw line quite a bit in this game, which is going to help. What's he averaging? 8.83 free throws in his last 10 games. Against the Hawks, 8.7 as an average. His last 2 games against Atlanta, 11 and 12 free throw attempts. He's shooting them almost 90% up against Atlanta. So yeah, I think DeRozan for 25 is maybe as part of the BAP could be a good play. He's got an excellent hit rate on that. But I don't know if I could take him for the full line here on his points. All right, looking at his assist prop here, 5.5 plus money, 5 out of his last 10. Hawks obviously allow a lot of assists. DeRozan has hit this in 3 of his last 7, although he has had 5 assists in 6 of his last 7 against Atlanta. Actually falls on 5 assists quite a lot, this bloke. So yeah, I think again could take maybe the 4 assists for the BAP because I think he's going to get his hands on the ball. He's going to be very active, but I couldn't confidently take the over 5.5 given the inconsistency here. Looking at his rebound though, that's 5.5 as well. I don't like that. He's gone under in 20. He's gone over this line in 27% of games this year. So naturally, you lean to the under. So let's look at the under. Under 5.5 boards, 73% of games he's gone under. And in head-to-head matchups, he's gone under this in 5 consecutive games against Atlanta. Again, the thing we need to think about here is DeMar DeRozan is probably going to get even more minutes. But in saying that, he's averaging 40 minutes a night in the regular season. He'll play 42 to 44 minutes in this game, perhaps. But still, given the matchup, he's struggled getting boards against Atlanta in the past. And in those games, he's playing close to 40 minutes as well. Like, yeah, I definitely lean to the under in his rebound prop. But again, the odds aren't great for that. Minus 148. But I'll research that a bit further and I'll do a little bit of line shopping because those numbers are a little bit convincing. Who else have we got in this game? We have Nikola Vucevic. His points line is 20 points, 19.5, however you like to call it. Minus 115 we're looking at. Now, he's cashed this in 3 straight games, 26, 27, and 29 to finish off the regular season. His matchup's not too bad here against Atlanta. His numbers are a bit all over the place. 2 of his last 6 against them, he's gone over, so that's not great nor convincing. For assists, his line's at 3.5, which seems a bit high to me, but it is plus money. 4 of his last 10, 1 of his last 6 against the Hawks, and then his rebound line is at 11.5. 4 of his last 10, and only 2 of his last 6 against the Hawks. So, yeah, a lot of these players are probably lean to the under on. So, looking at his PRA, 2 of his last 6 he's cashed, and only 3 of his last 10. It is the playoffs, so he might get more minutes. His last 3 games, he's been 38, 37, and 42 minutes in those games. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this was as they were trying to clinch that play-in spot. So if Vucevic can play over 37 minutes, I wonder what his numbers look like, given the magnitude of this game. When he plays 38 minutes or more, he's only covered this in 4 of his last 10. So that's not very convincing. So no play on Nikola Vucevic from me. So now we're looking at Kirby White. Now he's someone who I have been fading with some success as of late. The Atlanta Hawks, firstly, they don't defend point guards very well at all. Kobe White's line is at 19.5. He's cashed in 4 of his last 10 in head-to-head matchups. 3 times against the Hawks this year, 19, 20, and 22 points. So he's done quite well. I can see why the 19.5 exists. Fair play to you, sportsbooks. He's hit this line in 47% of games this season. So it does really stack up quite nicely. Kobe White, he scores a lot of points from spot-up shooting, so he does have a good matchup there. He scores a bit in the pick and roll. That could be a little bit difficult for him, but if he can run and if he can get in transition, he has a good opportunity to score some buckets here. So there's only a few plays for the Bulls that might actually run on the break. Kobe White's definitely one of them. Depending on the pace of this game and how it's played, I think Kobe White could definitely get some action. If I think about the playing games which have occurred today, that Lakers and Pelicans game, that started very fast. There was quite a bit of pace in that one. It only finished with a total of 216, though. And the Kings and the Warriors. A good defensive effort from the Kings. But yeah, hopefully, if there is a lot of pace in this game, I can see Kobe going over. I just can't predict the pace in it. Because if we look at the pace, the Hawks play with the 5th fastest pace, whereas the Bulls play with the 2nd slowest. So, yeah, difficult to get a read on how this is going to be played. This is in Chicago. I don't know. Does that lean to a slower pace? I couldn't tell you. But looking at his assist prop, though, 4.5, 4 of his last 10. Good matchup, but he's covered in 3 of 7. So the numbers here are a little bit chaotic for Kobe White. Rebound wise, 4.5. He's gone under in 7 straight. And he's only covered in 2 of his last 7. So based on what I'm seeing here, I'm thinking about an under in his rebounds plus assists. Now, the under's cash in 4 of his last 7 against them. And in his last 10, it's cash in 9 out of his last 10 games. Now, why is that? 6.3 rebound chances, 8.4 potential assists. So you're looking at about 15 potential rebounds plus assists. We need, well, not we need him to get less than 10 of those. Based off these averages, he'll probably get 8 to 9, and that's what we're seeing in this form line. In Brooklyn, in his last 10 games where he went over with 9 assists and 2 rebounds, he had 10 potential assists and 4 potential rebounds. So that's only 14. But from those 10 potential assists, he did get 9 assists in that game. So that's a very interesting start line. So under in his rebounds and assists, doesn't look too bad. But I know that the Atlanta Hawks are shit at preventing rebounds and assists to point guards. So I probably won't take it, but I'll watch it closely so I can kick myself if it lands. Who else do we have in this game? Ayodeson Now, he's got a very good profile. He's someone that I think can play well in this. The only concern for me is his status. So it's a game time decision. He hasn't played in over a week. I think he's got a bruise on his quad. So what's that, a corked quad, I'd say? His points line, if he does play, is 13.5. He's cashed in 8 of it his last 10 games. The matchup against the Hawks is a good one. They don't defend anyone. In head-to-head matchups, He's only covered in 3 of 7, but the 3 games he's covered in were all happen to be this season. 19, 29, and 15 points against the Atlanta Hawks. So I do like his over in his points prop. The matchup is good. The scoring profile, everything is really checking out. Now, the Atlanta Hawks, where are they the worst? Transition and spot up. Not too many players playing for the Bulls that are willing to run. Dosunmu is one of those. He'll score in transition, and he scores spotting up. And I think when it comes to corner threes, where the Atlanta Hawks are terrible at defending, I have a feeling based on the games that I've seen that Ayo Dosunmu, I think he takes the most corner threes from this team. Now, I have no stats to back that up. That's the eye test. But I feel like that's where Dosunmu usually sits, in that corner. So I feel like if he can make a couple of threes, there's a good opportunity there. Looking at his 3-point prop, though, because I don't mind that as well, 1.5's the line, which is a good line. Yeah, and then needs to make 2, but he's cashed this in 47% of games this year, 6 out of his last 10, and in head-to-head matchups, only 2 of his last 7. So the 3 games against Atlanta, he's cashed in 2 out of those 3. So I think the hit rate is, I probably feel a bit more confident in his points prop, if I'm being honest with you, just in case he gets a lot of points in transition. So I don't mind that. Looking at his assists, though, 6 of his last 10, 3 of his last 7 against Atlanta. So there's nothing crazy happening on that. Who else do we have in here? We've done Kobe White, Sonmu. We've pretty much gone through all these blokes. It's just Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso, I'm not too sure how he put 11, 5 of his last 10 games. He's only covered this in 1 of 5 against Atlanta. So I know a lot of these numbers aren't screaming at me. Assists, he's gotten some assists as of late, last 3 games, but he's never hit it against Atlanta. And then rebound-wise, 5.5. He's gone under in 8 of his last 10. And he's gone under in all games against Atlanta, but finishing right on 5. So he's been very close. He's probably going to be responsible for chasing probably DeJounte Murray and Bogdanovic around. So, yeah, I think Caruso probably falls into more of that defensive role, but you never know with AC. He can get busy very, very quickly. Now, so obviously Kings and Queens, bit of a deep dive, going through a lot of different players there. I think you could tell by the way that I was explaining everything. I don't absolutely adore the slate. I'd probably say my favorite plays are probably around Trae Young. I do like those plays. I think the Dosunmu play is a really good play, to be honest. The Tyrese Maxey play, it's got a great chance, I believe. I just hate knowing that everyone else is going to be betted on it. I don't know. It's probably because I'm a dickhead sometimes. And Tobias Harris in the first quarter, I think he can get real sneaky with that, but we'll see how many best bets I come up with. Our BAP hasn't cashed in 2 days, so hopefully we get some luck with the BAP. I'll get a bit more value plays, maybe some high value singles that I'm going to start looking into, but we'll see where we land. If you made it this far, I do appreciate you. Sub to the channel if you haven't already, because I do this on a daily basis. We do some watch parties from time to time. I do have a week off work in May, and what I plan to do is a watch party every single day. So here in Australia, these games are going to be played between 3 and 9 a.m. So there's no chance that I'm going to be able to do any watch parties or potentially even watch the game. So that could be difficult for me. I do have more exciting things for this channel. The playoffs are going to be fun and exciting. So sub to the channel. We surpassed 6,000 subscribers a couple of days ago. The next goal is to get to 7,000 subscribers before the end of the month. So we've got 13 days. So support your boy. Sub to the channel because your boy's getting busy. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Sub to the channel because your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.